Right.
Hey everybody, Scott Fisher here, once again with you, Senior Resource Connectors. As you know, 4 years ago, and maybe you don't, maybe this is the first time you've tuned into us, but Senior Resource Connectors was put together 4 years ago by a bunch of concerned business owners who all serve families in various capacities. But one thing was in common: we needed a louder voice to reach the adult kids. Many of us are in the middle of walking a journey with a parent, a spouse, and it's difficult. It's challenging. We're at a loss for words. We don't know where to turn sometimes. And so Senior Resource Connectors is unified a group of business owners to have a voice that reaches out to you. And we use this platform as one of the ways that we reach you. And one of those business owners is this guy, Leighton Tyau, who's an attorney and the founder of Copper State Planning. And we've got to know Leighton over the last couple of years, and he has a serious heart for people, and caring for people who are very vulnerable in a really difficult time of their lives. And so today I wanted Leighton to talk about some topics and things that he deals with. But first of all, Leighton, just want to thank you for your partnership, your participation, your contribution, and thank you for the great work you do. And thanks for joining me this day.
Of course.
What was the inspiration to go start your own firm? I guess maybe I'll start there. And to settle into this space, because there's a lot of areas of law to work in.
True. Well, starting my own firm, I've always been entrepreneurial, so that was kind of a no-brainer part. But estate planning, it's just my passion because it deals with all areas of life.
Mhm.
It combines family law, business law, tax law, and also elder law,
Mhm.
uh, all those areas. So I have a strong interest and background in personal finance and helping people plan for that next stage of their life, whether that is, end of life care or what comes after that. That really drives me. Um,
With a
yeah,
lot of avenues to practice in, it takes a special person with a special heart that wants to engage families and deal with some of the inter-family ch- relationship challenges, um, planning and poor planning that happened or didn't happen, should have happened, problem resolution. Some of the hardest fights I've ever seen are actually within families, right? And
absolutely.
and so it takes a special person with a special heart to dive into that deep end of the pool, man.
It does. I always think of myself as a problem solver. I
Mhm.
like putting together these puzzles, and each family, I think of them as their own unique puzzle in a way.
Mhm.
And you just have to figure out what pieces will fit where. Try not to fit the square peg into the round hole.
Right.
And then, you know, at least my personal philosophy is let's try to find the most effective solution to what is the real problem. Because the things they fight about, they're not necessarily the real problem. The real problem goes deeper. Sometimes they're upset about something on the surface level, but really maybe it was something that happened 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Mhm.
Or, more likely there's just this lack of trust that needs to be rebuilt.
Yeah. Yeah. And families will need a third person who can maintain objectivity and manage all the different feelings that are happening, because everybody's got probably some valid stake in the game, right? I mean, they're
Yeah,
all emotional about something. Um, I would imagine that, and I guess I've heard that a lot of estate planners come to the table with a very, I want to say, cookie cutter approach to things. But with what you've just described, it would really lead one to believe that this area of law deserves a lot better approach and a much more individualized approach to their family's concerns, right?
absolutely. The most people, I'll be honest, most people would probably be okay with the default plan, which is called intestacy. And any lawyer and most doc preppers can write that plan. That's
Hmm.
pretty simple. Um, but when you have these different dynamics or other situations, then you really need the personalized plan. And that's where a trust comes into play or a waterfall cascade of nominations. The most complex cases are really the ones that are blended families
Right.
or people with no heirs. Those are actually the toughest
Bet.
because you ask them, hey, who do you trust? And then their sisters are dead, their moms are dead, or maybe they're all equally as old and they've got no one.
Yeah.
Um, that it's the worst.
Well, one of the things that was an inspiration for us years ago when we started Connectors, Leighton, and maybe you know the story that Stacy often tells it. Um, she had a very special uncle to her, and Uncle Danny was diagnosed with COPD
Yeah.
erroneously. He was really had stage 4 lung cancer. And when we found out he was sick, he lived up in a small community outside of Cottonwood, Arizona. And when we went up to see Danny, he was very sick and was receiving his diagnosis that he had metastasized cancer, lungs, brain, liver, it had gone everywhere. And he had been under the impression he had COPD for the last year, so they were just treating a breathing problem. Um, Unfortunately, Danny was a person of resources, but he only had one heir. His daughter, his son had passed, and his ex-wife had passed. So, in Danny's opinion, when we said, "Danny, where are your powers of attorney? Danny, where's your estate plan?" Uncle Danny was like, "She's the only one," pointing at Stacy's cousin, and we're like, we the doctor won't even talk to us right now. We can't even go over to the bank and get your bills paid without. So I'm taking this dying man to the bank to add his daughter to the. We're having to do a cut and paste will and have him express his his powers of attorney late at the and he was gone 3 weeks. This was all he was over and out in 3 weeks. And even with what we did to do, at least cousin Marisa was able to speak to the oncologist and deal with some of the financial things and had access to some of his stuff. But the rest of it, she was in probate court for a year and nobody was contesting them. It is what it is. It takes time.
Yeah.
And all of it could have been dealt with way earlier without all the craziness at the end of that man's life, right?
Yeah, that's the number one thing people that's the number one mistake people do. They don't do it or they don't update it. Either one leads to can lead to disastrous outcomes.
Yeah.
Not all the
Yeah.
time, of course. I'm not gonna, you know, scaremonger people, but the ones that do make it to court, that's the issue.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll talk about updating because there's a lot of fluidity to our population. We have a lot of seniors that have relocated here, right, permanently that
mhm.
snowbirded for 20 or 30 years, right? They went back and forth to Atlanta or Michigan or, you know, Boise or something, and now they're here full time. And maybe they had a state plan done 25 years ago in Boise, Idaho. But what's the issue once they get to Arizona?
Yeah, so there's any number of issues with estate plans from 20 plus years ago. A big one I see is the mandatory bypass trusts. The estate tax exemption is no longer only $500,000. It went up to 1 million and then six, well, five, and then to 12, which is now 15 almost. So there's no longer any reason to do a mandatory bypass. You can do a disclaimer in there, but again, there's no reason to.
Mhm.
Also, back in the day, there wasn't portability, so that was a concern. Okay, outside of the advanced tax planning, the biggest issue I always see is unfunded trusts. They get a
Mm,
trust in another state for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the trust, but the lawyer never tells them that it's absolutely imperative to fund the trust.
hmm.
This happened to my grandmother. This happens all the time. I think maybe a third of my probate cases are unfunded trusts.
Really?
Problem with unfunded trust is that the whole point of the revocable trust, well, the major selling point is to avoid probate, right? That's the
Hmm.
selling point, most attorneys say. The problem is if you leave out $75,001, you're going to probate court. It defeats the whole purpose. And that could be anything from a debt someone owes you from a sale of a house. You do an installment sale. It could be a huge tax refund you're owed from the government. It could be lottery winnings. It could be a car. Usually it's actually the house. They buy a
Hmm.
house out here. They refinance it. They don't put it back in the trust, or they don't think to put it in the trust when they buy it out
Right.
here. That's the biggest one I see.
Okay.
Aside from that, then there's the choice of executors. Again, with deaths in the family. Um, I can I can't predict what future will occur, but I can tell people the futures that can occur.
Hmm.
And it's sad but true, but your our children can predecease us. They're not supposed to,
Right.
but they can.
Can.
And the ones I see, that's pretty common.
Yeah.
Children predeceased, and they don't have someone else lined up. Or
Hmm.
their plan from 20, 30, 40 years ago named Uncle Bob. And Uncle Bob is now 80 years old. The children are 50, 60. The plan makes no sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Usually
Yeah.
don't fight about it, but
Yeah.
it's silly.
And I know people are concerned about the cost and revisiting it at a certain time, but man, if they don't revisit that or we don't have those powers executed properly, um,
Yeah.
here's another situation I ran into. Can I share this with you? This happened just recently. There was a guy that lived in California. He had children here and he had children in California. Um, he moved here to be closer because he was now requiring to live in assisted living. He had California documents, okay, powers of attorney. When he got here, no one educated the family on the need for what Arizona has is that mental health power of attorney, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so nobody forecast the issue, which could happen. It doesn't happen to a lot of people, but when it happens, it's a dang mess. And this guy got real messed up in the head. His dementia took a hard turn. He actually got a delirium, which compounded the issues over an illness he had. Um, he ended up needing to be hospitalized in a behavioral health psychiatric hospital. Well, you and I know the issue. They can't hospitalize him against his will without that mental health power having been executed previous. The solution, guardians court.
Yep.
And the family is now spending 10 to 20 grand to go to court against, I'm sorry, the
It's
demented
on the low
father.
end.
What's that?
And that's on the low end.
That's on the low end. Yeah.
It starts at 10. That's what tell
Starts.
people.
Yeah.
Guardianship starts at 10.
And so now they've got to go to guardians court to get to become dad's guardian and conservator to act against him to become his
Yeah.
guardian, his everything. And this was a nightmare to get access to his money, to get access to being able to have the authority to place him against his will, just to hospitalize him again in the future if he ever has additional, setbacks in his care. And so I've run into that issue more than once. People have come from another state and they haven't been educated on the mental health power of attorney, which is pretty unique to Arizona. I think there's only one other state that has a law like ours.
I think you're right. It's a very, very new one. I don't know where it originates from, but going back to the powers, every time I have a signing ceremony with my clients, I tell them every 5 years we need to re-execute the powers. Healthcare, I haven't seen a hospital push back on that. They just want someone to make a decision. But the financial power, the banks hate them, and we still do not have that Uniform Power of Attorney Act. I don't think we'll pass it anytime soon. It's not
Right.
even in the cards. But without it, we need fresh powers every 5 years. Otherwise, we're going to have to go to get a conservatorship anyway.
Yeah. 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 I
Don't do
totally
it.
get that. And you hear horror stories about people thinking they have all of the right documentation and the bank's totally pushing back.
Yep.
And that's really, really hard. Hey, I want to touch another topic with you that seems to be always on people's mind and maybe take a few minutes to dig in. Um, how many people are getting hit by some various scam, phone calls, email scams, now text messages blow your phone up. You got to see this and just how do you help us with that issue? That's a big deal.
Everyone is targeted these days. I've probably had 10 spam texts today. None of us are safe. Our credit info is out there. This has become big business for criminal organizations. How do we do it? The answer is not powers of attorney, actually. Um, one, the first line of defense is always education, but here's what I tell people. As we get older, our mental faculties decrease, which means we're going to be much more susceptible to those scams. And the scams are getting better and better with AI. They'll fool us. They'll pretend to be our children or our grandchildren. The scam sophistication will become better. It'll be more targeted. Um, Workplace scams, that's another one that happens a lot. But what do we do? Education is the best one. Don't answer your phone, of
Mhm.
course, but how realistic is that? The legal solution I have been able to come up with is what I call a revocable asset protection trust or some variation on that. St Still working on the name, I'll be honest. But basically what it is, it's a revocable trust wherein you entrust someone else your power of attorney to handle your finances for you. Now, the way it works is it's still revocable, so it's still your assets. You still have complete control over it, but you're entrusting your trusted person to manage your finances for you. And how that works is this, and this is why it works, and a power of attorney doesn't. Once you sign over all your assets to your trustee, let's just say I do it and I trust you, Scott. You are now the signer on all the accounts, everything.
Mm,
I'll still have my personal, tangible personal property, jewelry, cash, whatever. But you pay all my bills, you do all my stuff, and you manage all my money. You manage my stocks, bonds, everything else. All right, scammer calls me, says blah, 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 whatever. I fall for it. I go to wire the funds. Oh no, I can't because I'm not on the account anymore. Even though it's my account, I can tell
yeah.
you to give me the money. I can't wire money to someone else because I'm not on the account.
Oh,
Okay, so you have to give up control a
yeah.
little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why it works. Okay, why doesn't a power of attorney work? All right, same thing. You're still on the accounts. You're my power of attorney. Bank knows you're good. You can transact. You can pay my bills. Everything's the same. The only difference is the power of attorney does not revoke my ability to wire those funds. So I call up the bank. It's my account. I'm
Yeah.
on it. Bank wires the funds.
I see. I see. Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea. Um,
It also avoids the conservatorship. Um, it's something that people who are vulnerable or need the financial help, this is what they should be doing, but it's very underutilized and I'm not sure anybody else is really pushing it. I know I do,
yeah.
but it, it's rare.
w- that's the kind of solution with creativity and thought that can protect people way before they know they're going to need the help, right? Which is always the hardest part is to educate people to take action, to insulate yourself long before you make a mistake. Because my mom got hit, my mom never had a lot of money, but good God, one of the things not only was her um, problem solving capacity diminished, right, with age, but you know what also is diminished? our emotional thresholds, and they preyed upon her fear,
Yeah.
right? And so now she's making irrational decisions tied into a fear because the IRS was on their way to the house. The sheriff is coming now with a warrant.
Yeah.
So get over to the grocery store and get me some iTunes cards, and I'll call you in 20 minutes. And of course, that's what she did. And so while you step back and you go, who would get iTunes cards, and how would you ever tell somebody who knew that if they pressured a senior who would panic, then here comes the irrational decision making when fear kicks in, right? And
Yeah.
it's hideous how people prey on folks, but
It,
we've got to
it's
educate them, Leighton. And I love what you're saying here.
Yeah, absolutely. The tools are available. That's the thing. This is nothing new. There's cases out there where people have used revocable trusts with built-in provisions for other reasons, but this is my twist on it, and I'm sure this has been used before. It's
Well, there
just
may be even within
not popular
families,
yet.
there's even within families, there's opportunistic cousins and nieces and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
children that would like mom's assets, and there's well-meaning,
Sister-in-laws.
yeah, well-meaning family members, and then there's family members with questionable motive that we've got to protect um, those vulnerable seniors. And I could see so many applications for what you just said. Hey, before we get out of here, I just want to maybe highlight one more idea or an issue that you are dealing with on a pretty regular basis or whatever, and just give you an opportunity to kind of share your final thoughts on anyone that comes to mind.
Issue we've been dealing with a lot lately is Medicaid, which is access in this state, and all Texas, the department, long-term care issues.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing people really don't think about is how are they going to pay for end-of-life care, and if
Mm-hmm.
well senior assisted living, if they can't do the ADLs, do they qualify for all techs? And then what happens to the house? Do they want to leave the house to the children, or are they fine with liquidating it and paying the nursing home or going to government, as they say?
Mm-hmm.
Um, if they give me 5 years, if they plan for it, we can protect the house. It's the most basic elder law trust we make, Medicaid asset protection trust. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. It's tried and true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the very least, we can make it transfer by operation of law, and maybe the estate recovery team won't get after it. Maybe they will. We don't know. Each case is different, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have 5 years, we can do that. But even if we don't have 5 years, there are techniques. We can't save the whole house at that point, but maybe we'd save half. Maybe we'd save a big chunk.
Yeah.
But, you know, having the conversations with the children as soon as possible allows so much more opportunities, because as you get closer and closer to when they go into that nursing home or when the funds are depleted, the options are gone, because once the
Yeah.
funds are depleted, there's nothing to save.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
qualify. They're impoverished. Here you go. Here's your alt text. Let's put in the application. You have to wait a bit. That's it. That's
Yeah.
straightforward.
Yeah. And
It's
and
that.
and sometimes families will grab one tool and exhaust and still burn down all the assets. And had they done it from a comprehensive perspective, like you're talking about, they
Right.
could have benefited from some other tools, and maybe the assets survived or some
Costs
of it. Yeah.
costs less, actually. It'll
Yeah.
probably cost you less money to pay for expert advice and figure out the best course of action
Yeah.
than try to wing it.
I'd
That's
love to
most
have another conversation with you and maybe talk more deeply into this. Um, Part of my mom's story was that we were, trying to navigate the line. And unfortunately, what most people don't understand is that accessing accessing Altex or Arizona long-term care is not a financial based decision. It is financial and need driven. and there is a pretty robust assessment of people's care needs. And there's a lot of folks that qualify financially that are not at the level of care need yet, and they are really in a tough spot because care costs are escalating, of course, and yet they don't have the income to do it, and they don't qualify for the program yet. So we have to really find some creative solutions for them. And so maybe next time you come back, can we talk more deeply about Medicaid and the past and all the things that go into that, and some of the the preventative counsel that we can offer families. I would love to have more of a conversation about all that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, really good. Thanks for joining us today, you guys. Again, Leighton, your contact information, we'll post that on the video here. Copper State Planning is located in Ahwatukee as their offices. You guys serve clients, I'm sure, all over the valley.
All over the state.
Yeah, and you even have a mobile component that helps get to people where they are at. So we appreciate you and your team so much to be a valuable part of the Connectors Coalition family of businesses. Leighton, thanks very much for spending some time with us today.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks again for joining us, you guys. We really appreciate it. Senior Resource Connectors is here for you. Please call us, reach out, find us on the web, email us. We are here to support you and help you in your journey with your aging loved one. Till next time, take care. Thanks very much.